What was that? Oh my God. Paramount. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh man. I would have loved to have been at that pitch meeting. They probably wanted to get something out there. And it's a I don't know when that movie coming out. That's like a January type of movie. What in the world? Wow, Sega. Sega's always known to screw stuff up. Oh, this trailer is bad. The CGI is bad. The everything was bad. I mean, the casting seems bad. The voice of him, Ben Schwartz doing the voice, that's a bad choice for Sonic the Hedgehog. It's this whole thing just spells bad. James Marsden, this is bad, man. Dr. Robotic, Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is the mad villain. I mean, we've seen it. It's just like he's basically Jim Carrey. At least they had to look. His look of Dr. Robotic at the end of the trailer, that made more sense. Can we stop putting everything back on Earth? Wasn't Sonic in space? I realize that's going to cost you a lot of money in the budget that you didn't really have. So let's just bring him to Earth so that way we ain't got to save money on, we can save money on CGI. Right? And you needed to spend some money on CGI. At least make the character look good. Wow. My thing is this, just make the character look good. If you don't do anything other than make the character look good, at least. At least. That's the only thing I could say is make the character look good. Make Sonic the Hedgehog look like Sonic the Hedgehog. Right, this was going to start off, I'm quite sure they're going to probably have a guest appearance of Star Fox and probably, like this was going to spearhead a whole bunch of Nintendo movies. Sega movies. Don't. Okay, we saw this make Rocket and what's his name? Rocket and Clank. This make that movie look like Oscar worthy. Just off the trailer. Now, people are like, man, the movie could really be good. Huh? How? How? It might go straight to DVD. It should. Because it should never be, I wouldn't even risk putting that at the movie theater. But I guess they thinking like, well, we're gonna put it out when there's absolutely nothing at the movie theater. I'll go watch nothing again before I sit there and want to watch that. It was disturbing to look at, man. Disturbing. I'm looking at it and I'm like shaking my own head, like, man. Like, what was the goal? If the goal was to make a movie that was supposed to look good, look bad, they accomplished it. 100% accomplished. $100. The Dora Explorer movie looked better than this. How in the world? Yeah, everything's live action now. That's the new thing. Animation is a thing of the past, even though it works. Even though it works. Everybody wants to get in the live action crowd. Hold on. You saw how it was done and handled. It wasn't handled properly, in my opinion. And they just did this and that, and everybody's trying. And listen, I understand that, but the trailer failed. It really failed. It let everybody down. This is why they didn't show what Sonic looked like on the poster board. They wanted you to be surprised, and we saw it. It was like, surprise! It's the crappiest CGI I have seen. I saw Boots in a Dora video, and Boots looked better than Sonic the Hedgehog. And he's the main character. He's the only guy you really have to CGI. Then when they had him turn into a ball and run, it looks terrible. I'm like, oh, that don't look like Sonic. Have these people actually watched or played a Sonic game? I'll have the director. I said, director, this is called Sonic the Hedgehog. This is what the game looks like. This is what Sonic looks like. Now look at that. He looks like a blue chipmunk. I don't know. This thing you got here is completely crap. You got a blue chipmunk out here and trying to pass him off as Sonic the Hedgehog. When you see this trailer, you're going to be shocked. You might laugh, and you might say, oh my God. But then it's Sega. So you understand. This is a company that went bankrupt and bankrupt themselves. They were video game makers. They were very great at what they did, and they had a system, and they wanted to pitch it to Nintendo. Nintendo was like, no, we don't need you to pitch us a system. What we need from you if you think Sega was beating Super Nintendo, you was on drugs. What they did was make Nintendo the strongest superpower in the world. All Sega had to do was continue making the games, and they would have been super rich in their endeavors. But no, they decided to get smart and get cute and say, you know what? We're going to break away from Nintendo. We ain't going to make games for them no more. We got a console that's better than Nintendo's game. Nintendo game and those cartridges, everybody's sick of those things. They don't work right and this and that, and they created a genius system, the Sega Genesis. The Sega Genesis had a blast processor. And that blast processor made the game play almost similar to how it is in Japan. See, in case you guys don't know, there's a limit in the United States on the speed of things that we can see and watch. Those are levels that the government put governors on our speed limits. On our video games for epileptic seizures and things of that nature. There's a law on how fast things can be shown here in the United States. In Japan, they don't have this law. A lot of other places like Yugoslavia, the law doesn't exist. So if you go to Japan and other countries, other states, you'll get to see that the barriers are gone. And because the barriers are gone, you're seeing people play games extremely fast. And it will blow your mind. So when Sega Genesis came out with blast processing, it was able to make the games play a lot faster. And that thing was exclusive technology that they own. They tried to get it to Nintendo, but they didn't want it. And here's the gist of it. Sega Genesis took off, and it made Nintendo have to change their strategy. Sega Genesis was very popular with the older children. People who were in their 18, 19s, and teenagers, they loved the Sega Genesis more than Nintendo, especially the action sports games like Lakers versus Celtics, that basketball game. Nintendo started developing their own games and saying, we're not going to pay anybody else outside no more. We're going to license our own games, and they're only going to be for Nintendo only. But other sports games and other companies start pitching. So Nintendo took some of them, like the NBA Lives. So Nintendo circled the wagons. And when Nintendo circled the wagons, they started targeting the smaller children and going for that market because it was an untapped resource. Now, this is where Sega went broke. They thought because they made better equipment that they were going to have more success. Better means better. That's not necessarily so. Nintendo came out with a handheld game playing system that was with the green screen, with the black dots and all that stuff, called the Game Boy. A handheld game system you can carry and take with you when you travel. The Game Boy. And the Game Boy was so successful for Nintendo. And Sega came out with their handheld gameplay, which was in color. And you can do everything. It was incredible. And they made a commercial making fun of the green background of Game Boy, and all the games look the same. And they's like, now here's Sega Genesis one. It looks just like the game you got at home. Now you get to play it. Now, do you want this? green spinachy screen, or do you want to get in the game? They had a crazy handheld play system, way better than the Game Boy. But tell me, why did the Game Boy sell more? Because the Sega handheld one, it had a lot of problems with overheating. It was too powerful. That's right, the Game Boy was cheaper. And by them trying to make their project that they had that cost about $30, $40 more, they tried to make it lower, down to $10 more than the Game Boy, so that people would buy their thing instead of the Game Boy. It failed. Because people like simple games. And Nintendo had the games. They had the games that the kids liked, the younger kids. And parents buy things more for those younger kids. They want that Game Boy, Game Boy. So they want the Game Boy, they want to play their game. And then when Yoshi came out, Yoshi was already huge. It was #1 in Yugoslavia. And it came over here, and you think those international markets don't count? Oh, they count. They're very addictive. And Yoshi was huge. It was just as big as Mario. And everything Nintendo was putting out for the kids was a hit. So everything else was just bonus. So by the time Super Nintendo came out and Zelda came out, the Ocarina of Time, the greatest game ever made, it was over. Sega came out with the Dreamcast. So the Sega Dreamcast came out, and that was going to reinvent Sega. After they came out with the, what was that, the Sega 3? Then they had Sega 3DX. Because when the after Super Nintendo, they came out with the 64-bit Ultra, Nintendo Ultra. And Sega Genesis is coming out with their 64-bit system. The Saturn, the Sega Saturn. So Sega Saturn came out, and when the Sega Saturn, the 64-bit system, then they had an adapter piece back then to the Sega Genesis to make it 32-bit. By putting that in, adding that would upgrade your games to 32-bit. Then when they went to 64-bit systems, you know, Sega made the stupid decision and bankrupt their company by having an announcement saying that Nintendo is being said that they're going to have a 64-bit on cartridge. Sega goes out and says, they're lying. There's no way you can have a 64-bit on cartridge. It's impossible. It cannot be done. Nintendo's gonna have to move over to a disc like everybody else. Oh, were they wrong. That wrongness torpedoed their entire damn company. When that president of operations made that remark and Nintendo unveiled it, they was like, the Nintendo 64 cartridge. Now watch 64 bits and they was ready. And they were like, yep. And Sega Saturn lost money, buddy. They lost money. Everybody had a Nintendo 64. I don't know anybody that had a Sega Saturn. And at that time, Sony was in the game. Sony was like, hey, we getting in the game, man. We got the PlayStation. We finna come out with our thing. Yep, so After this, Sega said, you know what, we're going back to making games, man. So they wanted to go back to making games, and they were like, no, we're going to give it one last shot. Our ultimate goal, the greatest system ever made, the Sega Dreamcast. The Sega Dreamcast was going to reinvent the wheel, and everything else was going to be, it looked pretty. White, had these great controllers, the pretty little gold tips that slide into the unit, the ports. The only problem is that those ports that they had for the controllers, they short out the entire system and they blow out, and the next thing you know, you cannot use those controllers again. They're done. So once you kept putting the metal in there when it's so hot already, and it will go in there, and once you get static on you from electricity, from laying it on the carpet or whatever, and once you go to insert that metal on metal, it goes bzzz, it burns the chip on the inside. You can't use it. So the Dreamcast has so many problems. It was like, oh my God, here it is. The Dreamcast is completely done. You know, I can't do nothing with this. So after that, Sega said, well, that's it. We're not putting out no more units. They fired the president of the company. They fired a lot of people. And they decided to go back to making games. So they've been doing that ever since. They were not putting out another system. So since the Dreamcast, you have not seen another thing. And Sega was doing all right making games. And now here they come with this movie. And I said, oh, Jesus Christ. It's over. They got a blue chipmunk running around out here calling it Sonic. That's terrible. Well, you can have good games, but you can't play them because your controller don't work. No matter how good the game is, you're going to be pissed off. That's what happened with the first Xbox. The first Xbox kept overheating. So to try to make up some of the deficit, they came out with a 360. The Xbox 360. That came out like right around the same time as the Xbox, and then they came out with the new Xbox. The Xbox One came out like right after the 360. 360 was just released, and they came out with another new system right after that, within less than a year. Because the Xbox One, they almost shut down the company, Microsoft, from screwing up. Making when Microsoft made the doggone, what's his name? They made that first Xbox that did them in. That thing could overheat and it was all over for your Xbox. You had a time bomb in your house. Then they fixed that and came out with the 360s right away. So if you were turning in your Xbox, they was making it up to you by sending you a 360. Like, don't worry, yeah, that was our fault, but we're back. And try this new 360. You're like, wow, okay, 360. We got the 360 now. Then they came right back with a whole new Xbox as soon as you got the 360. So they really didn't have a chance to make any money off the 360. But they got it right when PlayStation 3 screwed up their launch and released theirs so fast that they start malfunctioning and start getting the red ring of death. And everybody's like, what is going on with this PlayStation 3 launch? And the PlayStation 3s was all faulty. And a lot of problems in there with that foil. It was very thin, very cheap. They tried to cut costs because they wanted to add a Blu-ray player to the device so that you can watch Blu-ray movies on the doggone thing. And it made for a hell of a problem with the system. PS3 had a lot of problems. I don't know what you talking about. If you got it to work, yes. But if you got that red ring of death, boy, that's what I'm saying. If you had them early launches, boy, they lost their shirt. They fired the president of the company. And the PS4 came out perfect. But they weren't equipped. They were trying to keep up with Microsoft. And what really doomed them is the fact that they weren't really equipped yet, like Microsoft was, to do online gaming. And they were getting crushed with the online gaming, with the headset and everything else. The PS3 wasn't really set up for that yet. Not in the right way. Now they are. Now they neck and neck, if not crushing Microsoft with the streaming. And you got more storage space with the PS4. So the PS4 is definitely winning right now. But I'm out.